Kia ora, hello, my name is Johnny Haddon from Creative HQ. Awesome to have you here. This is the webinar series called People Who Did a Thing. We recorded it live on a webinar with lots of you the other day, but I just wanted to do this at the front end of that video to give you a little bit more context and introduce the topic. So this week we were speaking to Sarah and Richie from Callaghan Innovation about GovGPT and the great project that was and how that was stood up so quickly on the smell of an oily rag and delivered some real value to real customers, end users across New Zealand. So to give you a bit of an idea of why we're doing this and maybe who we are if you don't know. So Creative HQ, we're wholly owned by Wellington NZ, part of that local government framework. We were originally sort of set up to support startups, and that's something we still do and love doing, and run lots of sort of programs and ways to support startups. But we also work lots in government, and that's my role as the GM of Government Innovation. We set up and run the GovTech Accelerator, and as part of that and lots of other initiatives, we've got to work with 60, 70 plus different early stage public sector projects from just about every agency and local and central government. And one of the things that we learned through that was what makes projects successful and not. I did a bit of a research looking at all of those projects as well as ones we haven't dealt with across the public service, and found that there was some common themes emerging for projects that were successful and unsuccessful. And I guess that led to why I want to talk about this, people who did a thing, because spoiler is that it's people who got out there and just did it and added value early and in small iterative ways that created the most successful projects. And that is because the thing that I found is very prevalent in a public sector setting that sometimes isn't in the private sector is this idea of resistance. And that is that getting new things and change off the ground in government faces an uphill battle often. There is resistance factors that might be, ministerial directives or change of policies, obviously some risk aversion in there. There can be personnel changes and the slowness associated with decision making. There's the tech interoperability issues that can slow things down. And all of these mean that projects can be quite slow to materialize, and they sort of peter out on the way up that as they're trying to clamber up the resistance curve or graph. I sometimes plot it on a graph and sort of say that if you imagine let's do it this way. If you do the y-axis as resistance and then the x as value, projects as they're climbing up this resistance, they face all this resistance and they often die on the mountain, as it were, before they get to the top where they reach a tipping point. And the tipping point that they can reach can really start to, if they get to that point, can really start to accelerate the value as they come down the other side, or it would be this side, wouldn't it? Come down the other side and the resistance sort of melts away. But the problem is they don't make it to this tipping point. But what we found is that projects who bunny hop that resistance journey, they cut straight to that tipping point. And to do that, how they do it is if they just sort of get out there and do it by adding value quickly and in a small scale and iterate up from there. And GovGPT was a really great example of that. And we're going to be talking to others in this series who have done just that, who have managed to deliver some real critical value to end users to the point where those end users go, oh, no, don't stop there. Now we know that that's the new way of operating. That's really valuable. And then the momentum builds, some funding comes to increase it. And although they started really small scale with a really low budget, they actually create much more impact and success. So that's why we want to focus on this webinar series of people who did a thing and hear it directly from those public servants who have been involved. If you've got a project that fits this bill or we really want to tell that story, so please do reach out. I want to talk to you Also, if you're at the start of that journey as well, and want to know how to go about that, please do reach out. But that's enough from me. I'll jump over into the conversation that I had with Sarah and Richie now. Stick around to the end because there's a bunch of questions that were asked of the crew, and those are really insightful. So yeah, thanks.
Great, thank you. So hopefully you can all see my slides. Yeah, and a huge thank you to Creative HQ for the opportunity for us to share some of the behind-the-scenes stories of GovGPT. We also want to acknowledge our incredible partners, Microsoft and the Whānaki Māori Business Network, who helped us shape this mahi right from the beginning. Their insights and their experience really helped us and ground the basic of this project. So today's session hopefully is going to be quite relaxed. We do have a couple of slides we want to run through, and super exciting. And Richie will share some of the technical improvements that we made in the project, which never been shared before. So hopefully the presentation will run around 25 to 30 minutes, and we will have Q&A time at the end. So feel free to pop your questions into the Q&A and we'll pick them up at the end. So we didn't just want to build an AI tool for the sake of it. We started with the people we want to help, our customers. So one of the first thing we did ask is actually we sat down with our partners, the Whānaki Māori Business Network, and we asked them what's their number one issue facing their members when they're dealing with the government. And not surprisingly, the answer was quite simple, just literally finding the right information quickly and easily. And we all know it's, I believe a lot of the attendee today is all from public sector, and we all know kind of from experience is actually quite hard just to navigate services, not to say just one single website, but multiple websites. So the conversation really helped us and guided us and helped us shape the GovGPT, not just as an AI tool, but a practical solution, a digital front door, if we want to put it that way, that anyone, especially the small and medium businesses, can walk through without the needing of a translator to government speak. And here's the thing, we didn't want to just run the pilot on our own website because that could have been a quite easy and safer option. But we wanted to go a little bit bigger. We want to show that this kind of AI tool, the technology, could scale cross agencies and cross different type of information and still feel cohesive and helpful to the end user. So what we have here is kind of the high-level timeline. So after we scoped the problem we got building, I think Richie mentioned was back in August when we kicked off the design and development. And it took, I think it was around over 100 human hours with the small team. We kept it really lean, fast, and we focused on learning, not on perfection. By September, we were ready out there demoing the product that we have built, sharing it publicly at events, getting reactions and starting the conversation. And by October, it was live in a functional pilot and then people could interact with. So this is, here's the thing, it got really exciting and hard. And I remember very clearly, I think it was 2 days after the initial announcement, we were hosting a roundtable with Jessica Ford, our AI expert visiting from the US. And her advice was spot on. I remember she said, running a pilot isn't just about launching the tool. It's about supporting it, talking about it, and listening to users in real time. So the same day, same afternoon, we regrouped. The team got together on beanbags. If you've been to our Wellington office, you know what I'm talking about. And to respond to feedback that we had just got in the same day. So that was the moment where we realized, you know, this project is not tidy. It's not a linear project. It's live. It's moving, and we need to be able to adapt on the fly. So between the announcement and the official launch, we've run multiple events, workshops, information sessions across different user groups. And that part was really crucial. And we had to create the space for people to engage, ask questions, and challenge us. So the communication really played a huge role in the entire project. And we didn't want to wait to the end to hear what people, people's thinking and thoughts on the project, instead of sending a traditional survey at the end of the project. We've used a community platform to collect feedback in real time. So those insights was great. People were telling us what was working, what was the bug, the error messages, what was really confusing, and what needed to change. And based on those feedbacks, we actually pushed out new releases during the pilot. So it wasn't just a static demo. It evolved and changed, and the community really helped us shape that. And this slide here might be familiar to some people previously heard our project. So this is kind of what happened once we put the GovGPT out into the world. So first of all, we had a lot of usage, people interests. So we had over 600 people attended our sessions, either live or online. And it really showed us the hunger of those kind of things. And it's not just for the techie people in those organizations, but also people in different departments like marketing, website, information or data management, and also the actual users of what we intend to build the tool for. And the community has started from zero up to over 220 people. And we didn't just watch from the sideline, if that's a way to put it. We actively engage with the community, listen to the feedback, and improve the tool. On the usage side, we saw over 64,000 requests come through. That's equivalent of 65 million tokens that got processed. And for those not sure what token means, so I think one token is roughly around 70 to 80 English words. So it was great to see it's not just a proof of concept, it was actually used by the wider community. And from safety and trust perspective, the tool also blocked over 1,200 harmful and improper prompts, and thanks to the inbuilt safeguard and the filters in the tool set. So altogether, those numbers didn't just show, the volume, but also showed engagement, and that's really what we're hoping to see. So in terms of learning, so I kind of mentioned before, there's clearly a strong demand for AI-enabled service, I think especially in the public sector. But also what stood out is the importance of trust, not just the trust in the response or the answers to provide, but also as, the service as a whole. So if people don't feel confident using it, they won't engage at all. And that's why we've made some very deliberate design choices. For example, we've made the system prompt available. I think it was one of the example questions on the landing page. And also we didn't retain any user data or log. So nothing was stored. As soon as user closed out the browser, the session is everything get cleared out. And both were intentional. And probably not the recommended or best practice. We actually had quite a few discussion on those particular 2 points. But for the purpose of our pilot, we want to make sure that trust and privacy was baked in right at the beginning. We also brought a different area within the organization early, and that's specifically the legal team, the privacy and the security team. Not really treating them as a review step, but right at the beginning from the start of our project. And I do think that made a huge difference in shaping and kind of the success of our pilot. it kind of reinforced the key takeaway is we can move fast and be responsible as long as we have the right governance and the right people on the project. And finally, we saw the value of having clear frameworks around policy, transparency, and the responsible use of AI. And we didn't pretend we have all the answers, but we were transparent about every decision made, the documentation and lessons, and share that with the wider community. And now I'll pass to Richie to carry on the technical bit.
Thank you, Sarah. So we've talked quite a bit about the technical stack in previous sessions. So I will touch on the top three parts of this triangle first. The part we haven't really talked about is the additional security framework that we built towards the end of the pilot. So yes, we base this on a GPT 4.0 or the GPT 4.0 model in the Azure OpenAI platform. There are various reasons for this choice, the main one being that we had an existing relationship with Microsoft and GPT 4.0 did everything that we needed it to do up front. We also created a knowledge base of, it ended up being about 15 government websites as we had requests to add more throughout the pilot. And this database helped ground the information that users were receiving from the GovGPT model or platform. So building on all of that, which was that was kind of the first 100 hours, we also engaged with a partner to improve the security and reliability of the model. So this was done using something which I think Microsoft or our contact at Microsoft referred to as prompt sandwiching, where we added additional LLMs to improve the way that the platform responds to queries. So essentially what that meant was the workflow went from a user query goes in, a lightweight model checks the user query is allowed to be processed, so checks for bad words or phrases, terms, anything that we are not going to want the main LLM to answer. Then it gets passed on to the main LLM, which does the RAG lookup. And then the answer from the main LLM is passed on back to another lightweight model to check that the answer is allowed to be given to the person asking the question. So that way it gives more, well, it allows a bit more trust, and it also allows us to make sure that the user is not trying to break the model by asking questions that give a specific answer that they think that they can get from it. So an example might be something that we don't want a government chatbot to talk about, whether it's hallucinating or a real answer that it's pulled from its general knowledge. So in addition to that, we did put IP restrictions on this to block access to GovGPT from anywhere outside the Five Eyes countries. We added some character safeguards, which limited the query window, which meant that you couldn't get around some of the main prompt safeguards by essentially extending the character window past where the prompt would fall off the top. And we also use some chunking controls to help improve the reliability of the response. We did actually try much smaller chunks, and we tried much larger chunks. So we settled somewhere in the middle at about 2,000 or 1,500 chunks, 1,500 token chunks, which gave a really nice response to the questions. Flick to the next slide for me, Sarah. Sorry. So a big part of the improvement that our partner helped us do was building an evaluation framework. So the evaluation framework was the first thing they did because we wanted to be able to show that any of the additional work around the prompt sandwiching was still giving us an accurate and the responses we expected. And it actually showed quite a significant improvement. So I think, and here we say we had an 85 to 90% accuracy for typical queries. When the prompt sandwiching was finally in place, that came up to about 95%. So it was a significant improvement with that sandwiching, and the evaluation framework showed us that improvement. It also helped us highlight any knowledge gaps and kind of in a graphical way that executives like to see, a nice chart showing how responses improved over time as we added more information or as we made tweaks to the prompt. It gives really solid measurement. All of this is actually in the repo, so while our partner developed it for us, it is open sourced. And you're welcome to go and pull that. And I think I hand back to you now, Sarah. No, I don't. Sorry.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's
good.
It.
Cool.
Is there anything else you want to add for the open source part?
Yeah, I mean, so this is all open source on GitHub. You're welcome to go ahead and grab it. It is based on a Microsoft sample project on the upstream, but it is significantly different now from that. At the moment, it is still available as a standard repo, but we will be archiving it in about a month so that it'll still be there and you can still fork it, but it just won't have any active development on it.
Great, thank you. So that really take us to what happens next, what happens now. So we always saw GovGPT more than just a one-off pilot. There was about showing the potential of generative AI and what's possible, and we really want to sustain and build on that momentum. So we've got a couple of clear paths forward, and this was included in our pilot closure report. The first option, which is our recommended option, is to transit GovGPT into a government agency like GCDO and DAA, and that would allow embed into the broader digital infrastructure in Aotearoa. Very happy to share that this is already, work in progress. So I've been working with the team at GCDO, and what we want to do is potentially fold this into the existing pilot projects that GCDO is running, and run that together. In the second pathway, obviously we want to continue the open source project, and to be honest, this isn't a kind of either or, it's a kind of an and recommendation. And by staying open source, obviously we welcome and invite the community and contributors to continue involve projects like this. And finally, if the tool doesn't go anywhere or move forward, we have captured our learnings around the governance, the design, and user feedback, and we really hope those insights will be valuable for future AI initiatives in the public sector, and really hope this is just the beginning of many more projects to come. And that's the end of our slides. But Johnny.
Amazing. Yeah, hey, thank you so much for sharing, team. Look, I guess, guys, fire in any questions you've got there. But so one thing I was meant to say at the start, with my technology fluster getting the better of me. Look, obviously, unfortunately, Callaghan is closing down. The sun is setting, as it were, and I guess I'd love to know what you think you would be at, or where you would be at now with GovGPT if that wasn't the case? You've talked a bit about what is going to happen now that the unfortunate has happened. And obviously this is collateral, but where do you think you would have been at, given you had all those expressions from interest from different agencies wanting to get their content up there to be accessible in this manner?
Yeah, so it was actually my vision, actually our dream, actually to build almost like a marketplace with different generative AI tools available, and GovGPT is simply just one of it, and with partner Microsoft. So over the past few months, we've actually been building our relationship with other tech providers as well, like including AWS, Google Cloud, IBM, and even NVIDIA reach out as well. So we really want to use our little AI activator as a showcase platform, and be able to say, this is how we apply generative AI to different contexts. So yeah, it's a bit of a unfortunate we had to put a stop on that, but we're still quite glad GovGPT was, the pilot has finished and we're able to move on to the next steps for that particular one.
Mm-hmm. What do you see as some of the let's call it low-hanging fruit, right? What are some of the use cases where you think we should really be leveraging AI across the public service in a way that's perhaps, like you mentioned, Richie, some of the reasons were the security and things that meant this application was quite a really good starting point. What are some of those other sort of low-hanging fruit, first cab off the rank type projects that you've seen and heard of?
I mean, the way that we approached this was we looked at what would give the most benefit to our customers for the lowest amount of investment. So in the case of this, we heard from Whariki that their customers, so they're a customer of ours, and they have customers that are searching for information about, say, starting a small business. And small businesses is one of Callaghan's key customers, or was one of Callaghan's key customers as well, customer bases. So they had trouble finding information on MBIE's website, on Inland Revenue's website, on a variety of different government agencies' websites. And as part of the research we were doing to discover what information we wanted to index, we found that we were going in loops. So you would click a link on a website, it would take you to another page on that website, and the link from that page would take you back to the first website, or the first page on the website. So what we found very rapidly was as soon as we had the information in GovGPT, it was a lot faster for a user to get the information quickly. So I think for government, the real benefit of an LLM is surfacing information that customers otherwise might have a lot of trouble getting, and getting that faster, not necessarily reducing the amount of time or amount of people needed to surface this information, but improving the access for people so that the more difficult questions can be answered more quickly by a CSR or a front of house type person. So yeah, in having a single way of accessing government information would also be a really big benefit. And that there are lots of ways of doing that and getting that information all into one place, but it's going to require government to kind of get together and think about how they want to approach that.
Yeah. Hey, so obviously the URL is now not working. Some people who perhaps didn't have a play at the time are wanting to get in there and get their fingers on it. I'm not sure, did you guys do a screen recording of an example question, and is that on the GitHub, or is there somewhere where we could share that?
We have a video. I don't know if is that on our YouTube page still, Sarah, that we could?
Yeah, we had a little kind of demo video during the initial launch and announcement, so we can definitely share that with people attending or watching the webinar later. But yeah, so it's unfortunately just due to the ongoing cost, obviously, by keep it up, there's a ongoing cost behind it, so we had to conclude the pilot itself.
But my understanding is that was, your hand was forced there with the closure of Callaghan, right? Like it would have been kept up potentially. Just so another question here is around the evaluation, and this is subjective a little bit, but the material usefulness of someone using GovGPT. How useful was it? Did you do an evaluation around that?
So I'll just quickly jump in on the technical part of the answer, and Sarah might want to talk a bit more about the business side. So we early on made a decision not to collect user information. That was primarily because we didn't want to, have to, we wanted people to trust that we weren't storing their information and it wasn't going to be used for any evaluation purposes or anything, or to improve the model. That was a key decision that we made because we wanted people to trust us, trust the platform. And from a technical perspective, we actually had to do a bit more extra work to get all of that turned off. Yeah, so we don't have any technical measures that we have other than the total usage.
Okay, and obviously we're talking 6 to 8 months ago as well, Richie, right?
Yeah.
When you launched it, and we know how quickly everything's moving.
Yeah, and the usage right to the end stayed fairly constant. We were seeing a couple of hundred requests a day right to the end.
Okay.
But yeah, Sarah might have some more kind of thoughts on the business context.
Yeah, and we definitely had some of the feedback come through in the community as well. Is actually either pointing that the tool actually doesn't provide the full picture, which again, because we only selected a limited number of websites to index on, and also one of the problem was quite interesting. Obviously, as a human, we can judge when we look at something. We can judge whether that's right or wrong, and we know. For example, Callaghan Innovation, when you come to our website, we know this is a government website. It is designed for businesses only. And the website, there's nowhere on the website actually explicitly say if you're a sole trader or a charity, and then we can't help you with any of the services that listed on here. But because that's not explicitly stated on the website, and therefore when the machine try to read it and presenting that information back, it will actually say, oh, as a sole trader, sure, you are eligible for, or potentially you can continue to explore the services and products that Callaghan offers. So that was some limitation we have identified is, that's where kind of different between human and machine.
So, any last questions, team? Fire them in. So if we look at the public service as a whole, obviously, I think you guys are testament to the best way to learn and demonstrate value is just to get in there and do stuff. And I think that my personal view, and I think you guys hold it, and I'm sure many others do, is that we need to be experimenting and trying things in government in a safe way. How can we both do this collectively, while sharing knowledge and not all running off and doing the same thing 100 times, but not slowing us down collectively as we experiment, test, and try implement AI solutions across government?
I think there's already a lot of effort put in to support that. I know GCDO last year, they have started running this AI community center excellence. I can't remember the exact name, but that was actually that was aimed to support public sector, and actually like I said, communication is really key, is for us to share the experiences that each individual of us had, so that we're not repeating the same mistake. And I know there's a lot of effort, or at least thinking in terms of creating the safe environment or sandbox to allow different agencies be able to come in and run their AI projects on. So that's actually also something we obviously had first-hand experience. I'm not sure, Richie, if you want go into a little bit details of how we actually really decoupled the environment GovGPT was built on from the core Callaghan IT environment.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what we did. We stood up a brand new, completely separate subscription in Azure, which then allowed us to be 100% sure that none of our corporate data would cross-pollinate. So that I think was a key thing that our CISO at the time was keen on as well, just and our information management team, just because we didn't want to accidentally give it access to something that we didn't want it having access to. That's an important consideration for other government agencies working on things like this as well.
Yeah, of course. That security element is always huge and front of mind. So someone here just asked about, I guess your view on what you think the appetite is for agencies to continue this work. You guys had a leadership team that were really in favour. I think no secret that Stefan Korn, has deep expertise in this area and was sort of wanting you guys to demonstrate an example. What do you think the appetite is of other agencies?
I've heard mixed views on that. We definitely see more and more agencies, not only just the people in the operation team, really keen to push out more and more AI projects. And I start to hear, a lot of people in the senior leadership actually start seeing the value of it. And obviously with the previous Minister Collins, that her portfolio, she was a really advocate for those emerging technology, and even with the new minister, Minister Richie, he's also very keen to support initiatives like this. So I definitely see there's growing interest and growing support from senior leadership, but like you said, to have someone like a sponsor within the agency, it definitely helps. That's something we're very lucky to have him and supporting the work that we were doing.
And my peers in the technical community are split a little bit. Some are worried that people are moving too fast. Some are really excited to get hands on the new tools. So
we know there. Sorry, I'm just going to say there are also growing numbers of training in contents and materials come out. And I know recently the Institute of Director, they start pushing out targeted content and resources for people at the governing level.
Richie, when you say your peers some are worried we're going too fast, is that in government? Just to be clear, it's generally people who are more security minded in government, security and privacy minded. It is there's a lot to consider when you're looking at pointing something like this at corporate data, or more scary is customer data.
Yeah, definitely. So that approach you guys took of having a bit of a firewall there, if you like, didn't have the keys to the back office.
Yeah, and it also only using publicly accessible data for the RAG was the other critical thing.
Yeah.
Nothing that we used was from behind any kind of login. It was all things that are already indexed by other LLMs or AI models.
How far away are we from being able to, because obviously there is lots of information that is behind the curtain, as it were, that is actually would be in the public domain if someone did an OIA, for example. So how far away are we, do you think, from being able to create tools and systems that do have some access to information that isn't currently in the public domain?
It's already there. So the tools and technology already exists to do exactly that. AWS, in fact, is very powerful in that space, as is Microsoft and IBM. We didn't really get a chance to play with the Google environment, but AWS in particular has a lot of plug-in ways of getting access to corporate data.
Yeah.
And that could be data that is behind a typical login screen or box or whatever. So the tech is there. I think the difficulty at the moment is trust of the public. So that is something that Sarah's master plan was hopefully going to help develop. But I think there's still, as with anything new, so EFTPOS cards is one example that I think maybe Stefan or Sarah or someone used. People didn't trust those at first, and now they're ubiquitous. So eventually, yeah.
Last question, and then we'll wrap up with a closing karakia, and also just share with what the next topic is going to be for the next one of these discussions as well. So how did you manage the 5%? 95% accuracy is amazing, but there obviously is an inaccuracy there. Was that sort of just a part of the course, or did you sort of manage that actively in some way?
So one way to, I guess, to make it more clear, like to say this is an AI tool, and AI can make a mistake, and similar messages are seen across different language models or generative AI tools out there on the market. And that's where, when I mentioned to get legal in right at the beginning, so the actual terms and conditions, the UX design, how can we actually ensure people are really seeing that message and really not 100% trusting that. And also, to be honest, we actually had a bit of discussion internally on that topic as well. As human, or myself as a non-English speaker, I make mistake all the time. We can't, put 100%, accuracy when we're talking to humans. And why are we putting that expectation on the machine? So I think for us that 95 was actually quite a good bar for us to hit.
The other important distinction is that it's 95% accuracy based on the information that we had. So if the information on the government website X was incorrect, well, yeah, I think if Gina, our CISO, was here, she would have some words to say about that, but she's said it many times in previous sessions, so we'll just leave that.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. We are going to be putting this video up on the website and probably emailing it out to everyone here as well. So we don't want to lose this knowledge. There aren't that many great use cases of public servants actually given AI a go. So, I do take the hat off to you and look forward to seeing more and more of these happen. Hey, just to close us out, I do just want to say we're going to do another one of these on the 7th, I think it is, of May. And that project is a really cool one looking at Doc. Doc built a tool that basically links up an AI platform called iNaturalist with a whole, which is like public making notes of data and identifying weeds and other organisms that are growing, and they basically took that and a whole bunch of Doc existing data and created a tool that alerts rangers and people that need to know when weed occurrences happen, and they did it on the smell of an oily rag, and it was a problem that costs us $5 million a year, and it was getting kicked down the road, and a small team at Doc basically picked up the challenge and went out there in a few months, built a real live tool that is now up and working and delivering value. So 7th of May to hear more about that one as well. Thanks again to the team. If you've got any other examples and stories of cool projects that you've been involved with that perhaps haven't seen the light of day, and we'd love to talk to you and share those stories across our colleagues across the public service. So to close, we'll invite my colleague, the man Tane, back into the fold, and karakia. Let me just bring it up onto. It means say along with us. You might have heard this one before.
Manuatina. Manawa tōka, manawa tōka. Tēnei tō hoki tō manawa ka tīna, tēnei hoki tō manawa ka tōka, tēnei hoki tō manawa ka pautai kitia, tīna noho tō manawa, he manawa ora, he ora. E rongo, whakairihi ake ki runga, turuturu o whiti whakamaua kia tīna, tīna, hui e, tāi ki e.